Welcome to The Artistic Process. This is episode 11, The Artist and the Lessons of La La Land. Proudly brought to you by Movement Apparel. I really want you guys to go check them out on Instagram. They have some amazing deals happening right now. And if you go to their website, movementapparel.ca, you can use my 15% off discount code, I am an artist at checkout, on top of their great deals. I am your host, as always, Giulia Tripoli, and today's very special guest is a close and dear friend of mine, Randi Liberman. She's incredible, wonderful human, talented dancer, inspiring teacher. I cannot wait for you guys to hear all the gloriousness she has in store for us today. She has danced with artists such as Megan Trainor, Rita Ora, Fifth Harmony, tours with Darwin and Baby Rexa, and has most recently started her own program, the Virtuous Movement. Let's get things started. Here's Randi. Excited to welcome my dear friend Randi Liberman to the podcast today. How you doing, Rando?
Hello. How are you?
So good, so good. I'm really happy to have you here. I appreciate you so much.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Oh my goodness. So let's get this party started and let's let our listeners know a little bit more about you. I would love to hear everything from, young Randi to now, how she came to be, where dance started in your life, etc. Just give it all to us.
Oh boy, where to begin? Okay. Well, when I think of young Randi, I just really picture this little kid running around the house, literally singing and dancing everywhere. I have no idea what happened to the singing talent, but I definitely was dancing everywhere from what I can remember. That's kind of it. Always my dad with a video camera, just videoing myself and my sister. She was often just, running after me and copying the things I would do. But we've been dancing around the house for years. And when I was probably like first year of elementary school, I think my parents put me in like extracurricular dance class, and I don't even think it necessarily had a title. I think it was called like Funky Steps or something of the sort. And so I just remember, taking my first class and it was just, I just loved it. I just remember like, it's all I wanted to do. And I, just was taking this extracurricular class for years. And, I just think it was something that was just in me. And it's funny because I was kind of a shy kid in public, but then I was just, whenever there was dance, I was just like, in it to win it. So as I got older, I continued to do that. And I was also, I actually started to teach really young. My teacher at the time had me a sister. I think I was 11 years old, and she was, pretend you're 12, you go to this high school, and because I was teaching like 10 years old, I was 11, and not only assisting her, but she actually just put me in a room with them and was like, teach them my choreo. So, I think I was learning that type of, understanding how to teach at a really young age. And I think I've always had this kind of, nurturing, maternal instinct to me. And so teaching's been a big part of my life as well for a long time. And so only when I was about 15 did I start taking like actual classes in terms of styles, when hip hop classes became a thing, and I only started to take even jazz, ballet, all those things a little bit later in life. My mom apparently asked me if I wanted to go when I was younger, and I was like, no. And, I somewhat wish I would have, because I think it's so great to have a base of everything growing up. But I think I just loved it for the performance aspect and for just what it was. And so, I got into studio at about 15 and was a part of that for quite a few years. As you know, I think we learned a lot of things there in terms of like, I definitely, honed in on my skills and on my love for dance. But I think, we also realized we were in a negative environment. And so eventually once I, realized that wasn't, I guess just feeding me anymore, and took myself out of that position, I was by that point already 25. And so, I had learned a lot of things being in Montreal. I had experienced certain things, and I just got to a point where I had to realize, like, where is this taking me, and what's next, And I think that's also, around the time you had opened the studio, and I remember pretty much coming to you right after that, and starting to do and dance over there. And I think I just got to this point where, because of the negative training environment we had been in, I was like, where is my love of dance coming from at this point, And when I was young, I think I just loved it, and it wasn't a question, and I was just doing it. But you get to a certain point where I think you realize, you're like, well, wait, why am I doing this? What does this mean to me? And I had to refine that. And luckily I did. And I just said to myself, what, if I'm going to continue doing this, I'm going to have to go kind of all in on it. And it brought me to obviously question, well, what does that mean? Where am I going to be? And I, as much as I love Montreal, I realized it didn't have the opportunities that for the things that I wanted to be doing. And that's where I said, okay, well, I've never really branched out of Canada, of Montreal, in terms of dance. It's time to go see what else is out there. And obviously, you would hear of New York, you would hear of LA, and that those are the places to be in terms of, training and industry. And so I took a bunch of trips, and I went to New York, and I started training with, American choreographers, and just learning different things, and so many things that, I just wasn't necessarily learning back in Montreal, and just different styles and different knowledge, I'll say. And went to LA as well. And I was like, you know what, this might just be the place for me. And it was definitely a big decision. I don't think it wasn't like I had a million people around me being like, yeah, you're going to make it, just go, I definitely had a lot of support from friends and from, everyone around me, but it wasn't like, as much as I love my parents, they weren't necessarily like, yeah, go try this, where only one
Right.
people really do it,
Yeah.
Yeah, so it took me a minute to decide that was really what I wanted to do for myself. And I think I got to this point where I was like, you know what? I think what's gotten me as far as I had was, a lot of what my parents instilled in me, which was being kind, being caring, being hardworking, being patient. Like those four elements, I feel like, is really what made me always work hard in school, always work hard in my sports teams, in my dance classes. It was like, yes, I loved the art of dance because I've just been doing it ever since I can remember. But it was those things that really got me, I think, as far as it did. And I just was like, why can't I just continue to use this and see where that takes me as well? And I knew that I would regret it if I didn't try, And
Oh yeah.
yeah, it was definitely a tough decision. Like I said, not having people telling you you're going to make it, not even knowing people in the States and planning to go there, especially as you already feel like you're an adult, you already kind of know who you are, and you've established yourself in a certain way in what you've done in your own city, let's say, and it's like, okay, so here we go, we're going to start over. And not only that, but there's the whole visa process, and obviously moving across country and all of that amazing stuff. So, anyways, I finally just said to myself, I don't know exactly where it'll take me. It may not take me exactly from point A to B, but even if I get to C, D, or E, like I'm going somewhere forward, and that is all that can really, that's what matters, And so from there, it was a start to the visa process, and finally, making the move to LA. But it was a huge process, and definitely took a lot of time, energy, money, but I wouldn't change it for anything.
I think that's incredible. And I think a lot of dancers need to hear this because so many end up losing their love of dance due to bad experiences. And we have to take the good and the bad and move forward in what I think you've done in this inspirational way and finding your purpose and finding your why. And the facts that the odds have never been in our favor when it comes to dancers kind of moving to the States, but there's something about Canadians. There's something about our work ethic, I think, because we don't have as much here. So when we head to the States, there's just this extra determination in us. And it's shown in the work you've done and the things you've been able to accomplish. And I know it wasn't easy, and I know you've been putting in so much time and effort. And a lot of dancers should hear about how hard it is to actually, properly do your visa and get out there. But you did say you wouldn't trade it for the world and that you love being in LA. So let's talk a little bit more about LA. What happened once you got there? Give us the nitty gritty, everything that you had to go through, so people understand the reality of it. It's not like those dance movies where you move and the next day you get discovered dancing in a cafe. Like, it doesn't work that way. So give us what really happened once you moved there, what you had to go through, some of your, biggest, best moments, maybe even some of the darker ones, so people understand that if you do persevere, you will eventually find the light. Give it all. Give it all.
Oh, oh boy, yes. I mean, you're totally right with what you're saying. Obviously, it hasn't been easy, and I cannot say it's just been this whole dream. I mean, I am so thankful for the amazing things, the experiences, the people, the knowledge, and all of that. But it definitely has been a journey. I'll say that. So, I mean, yeah, getting the visa is one whole thing, and that's a process in itself. And it took a long time. It took me. I was teaching full time in Montreal just to be able to make the money, to be able to, take the trips to LA, to New York, to gain the experience, to gain the relationships that I needed to be able to then work on the visa and then pay for the visa and then pay for the move. So just a lot of steps involved. But, I've kind of always looked at things like, all right, well, what's step one? And that's going to take me to step two. That's going to take me to step three. And I mean, one piece of advice I'll give just off the bat is, don't let something so overwhelming just do exactly that and overwhelm you. Like, break it down, look at what this thing is and be like, well, where can I begin? Because just that first one little step is literally going to snowball you into all of the other steps that you need. And if you can manage to have, keep this mentality of working towards what you want, which, I mean, I can talk about that a bit more after, but I think you will realize that you really can accomplish these things that seem at first glance like very overwhelming. So anyways, it took me, a while to do that. And I just remember this final trip once it was about to, the visa was ready to go except for these major components. And so I made this trip to New York for a summer. I took a month and then I went a month to LA. So I had this full summer of just being, just training, and not only that, but I was working on getting my agency, I was working on getting headshots in, from LA so that I was ready for that. I was, making certain connections, getting my deal memo solidified, which is one of the, main components of the visa. And so anyway, when I finally got all that together, it's just crazy how it comes together all in the end, which is why I say like step by step is kind of the way, because you'll see it all come together in that last final step, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So once I had it, I got to LA and it was crazy. I got there. I was also with Jess Cummings. We decided to move over there together, another Montreal awesome dancer. And we rented a room out. We were staying in a place, living on air mattresses for the first few months. Then they got bed bugs in that house, so we had to get out of there real quick. So we ended up renting out an Airbnb and living in a bed. Like, we were sharing a bed in this room that was literally just a bed. And so we did that for a little while. Then we rented another apartment, and only like months after having like actually moved there did we get our apartment, which is still the apartment I'm in today, which I'm super thankful for because it does feel like home after 5 years. But all to say, it was not easy starting out. Also, when you're on a visa, you're not able to get another type of like regular job. So money is definitely, a struggle. I'm not going to lie about that part either. When you're not working in dance, you're not working. So if you get here and you have to, figure out how to get that first job, how to get in and be known and etc., you have to be really cautious with your money, and it can be very difficult. And I literally remember being on my first job that I ended up booking, let's say, a few months after having moved. And I was struggling to pay my rent because I was off, on this. It ended up being this amazing tour, which I could talk about after. But it was my first job and I was struggling so hard just to pay my rent. And here I am I'm supposed to be on this amazing job, and I'm stressed because I, saw my money just go down and down and down up until that point. Right. And so, and it's definitely been a struggle. There's ups and downs. The industry is not predictable. You have no idea, oh, this is a good time for work. This is when you have no idea. It's just never, there's no rhyme or reason, if I can say.
No.
And also, you get here and you realize that being good is just the prerequisite. And that's what I always say. It's like you get to the place where everybody is coming to do the same thing you want to do, and you look around and see that there's, 50 other girls that look like you that could pass for the same part, that could do the job technically. And it's a question of how is that going to make you book the job? How are you going to stand out, and how are you going to be the person that's going to get it over anybody else? And I think, this is actually where I just learned so many things, honestly, in life, obviously in dance, but also just in my life and as a person, and in terms of perseverance and resilience. This industry will test you in all of those things. And
Mhm.
the stories you hear about LA are true, in the sense that you're going to hear all the crazy audition stories. There's going to be 800 other girls at the same audition. You're going to see people wearing all types of things from A to Z of what they choose to wear to these things, and you have to figure out where you fit in. And I think that was the first thing that I had to realize getting here was, who am I going to be within all of this? Who do I want to be? What are my values, in terms of as a human and as a dancer, which obviously work one and the same, I believe. And what are my boundaries going to be? And so it took me a little bit of trial and error to figure that out, for sure. But
Yeah.
once I was able to do that and say, okay, what are my strengths and weaknesses? There really is room for everyone if you can look at it that way. If you can really understand that there's a place for you, as long as you know where it is you want to be, you will find those places. And, that's one of the main components of my program that I've just created, which again, I'll, talk about a little more later. But I just feel like that is so, so, so important. And something that I almost wish earlier on I had even recognized, is that we make our own choices. We decide what it is we want to do, who we want to be, and nobody else can really tell us. As much as we can get advice, and we can, have, let's say, our parents or family members or close people telling us what they think we should be doing, there's nobody that can know what you truly want to be doing except for yourself. And you have to
Oh
be
yeah.
willing to listen to that. And I think that is one of the toughest things. And I'm thankful that I moved to LA at a bit of a later age than some people do. I was 28 by the time I moved to LA. And I was just thankful because I already knew who I was as a person. And that, I think, helped me like clue in real quick to, okay, I got to figure this out on a deeper level. Like, I got to really know who I am. I got to know who I am as a dancer as well. And I got to make this happen quick to catch up, and so that's what I did. And I could tell stories about crazy auditions. There's so many things. But it definitely just isn't an easy feat. You just have to love it that much and want to do the things you want to do and believe that they're going to happen, and you will eventually get there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, adjust, pivot, readjust, redirect. But the ultimate is that you need to train, you need to put the work in, you need to network and make genuine connections.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned something really important that I don't think a lot of dancers take into consideration. Now, I know you've always been someone who stands firm in who you are and your beliefs. And you went to LA, like you said, a little older. 28 is not old, but you were perhaps a little wiser than most. And knowing your values and your boundaries is something so major that I don't think people take into consideration ever. And then doing that and moving to another city where basically you could be asked to do anything at any time. But knowing who you are as a person and a dancer is major in this world. And
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate you reiterating that so that the younger dancers who are listening understand that they need to kind of figure those things out first before they make these major moves. You can still adjust, readjust, figure out more about yourself. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're going, by the whim of your pants and you have absolutely no idea who you are, it can be a little rougher.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and you can fall for things, I think, a little bit easier. So you need to be able to have your values and your boundaries figured out, something I think everyone should start figuring out. Now, you mentioned a lot of the craziness, you mentioned a lot of the pitfalls and downfalls, but what about the triumphs? What were some of these major gigs that you got that really made you realize that all of the hard work was definitely worth it?
Yeah. Great question, because obviously there's been a lot of both of those things. Um, uh, so basically, I'll start. Okay, I always tell this story, but I think it's one of the great ones that I just cannot, forget. So it starts with a crazy audition and it gets to the triumph, I would say. so
Go for it.
so one of the first auditions that I ended up getting out here was within my first few months of moving, and so I was very green, and I get here and they tell me it's a private audition, and I was requested to be there by, I don't know, picture submission or whatever it was, and the description was that it was for, I think it was for a speaker company, and they were wanting us to be balls to the walls crazy. I just remember this specific description, and they wanted us to we were gonna have to like learn choreography, but then there was some like a lot of, I guess, acting type of things involved, and they wanted us to it said potential to have to kiss your counterpart at the end of the video or something, or at the end of the shooting. And so in my head, it's like, okay, if I book this thing, that's when I'm gonna have to decide if I'm gonna potentially do that and if it's something I'm comfortable with, right? So I get to this audition. We were supposed to be 5, but only 4 showed up. So we're 4 girls sitting there. We don't know each other at all. We're all just kind of staring at each other. And eventually we start chatting a bit, and then we get called into the audition room, and there is literally this choreographer who was a well-known choreographer at the time. I knew she was, and she's there with her assistant, this, a male, and she, very casually just says, "All right, guys, so this is, this is Ryan, and he is going to be your counterpart in this scene. And basically you guys are going to start making out over here, and then he's going to roll you around on the wall and then lick your neck from here to here. And then he's going to take you and put you up on this bar that's right here. And then if you're cool with it, take off your top. And then he's going to grab you, pull you on the floor, and you're going to just kind of pretend that you just finished whatever." And so I was like, cool. At this point, I'm just staring at her, and I'm like, uh-huh. And the other girls are kind of next to me, and we're all kind of looking at each other, and then the choreographer, again, very casually, "So do you guys want me to repeat that?" And we're just like, sure. So she repeats the exact same thing again. And then she goes, "Do you guys want a minute?" And then one of the girls says, "Yeah, I think we'll take a minute." So we go off, into another room, and we're all there. Okay. And so I just remember this, this girl, she just seemed like she knew what was up and what was down. And, in her English accent, she says, "Well, I can't do an English accent. I'm not even going to try." But she said, "Well, I'm not even, I'm just going to let you guys know this is not for me. So I'm going to be stepping out, but you guys obviously do what you want." And then you have this other girl who's like, "Oh my God, I just got married last month. This stresses me out." Then you have this other girl who's like, "Meh, I'm going to do it." And I'm just there going, okay, what is my decision at this moment? And I just kind of thought about it, and I was like, listen, I got to LA to be a dancer. To me, there's zero choreography involved in what's being asked of me. At the time I was in a relationship, and I was like, I don't really need to be making out with someone right now. And it's not even for the job. It's not even like you're offering me the job and the money and the things that come with it. You're just asking me to do this for an audition. So long story short, I decided, this wasn't for me either. And so 3 out of the 4 of us had to go and tell the choreographer, "You know what, I'm sorry, this isn't for us." And she was just like, "All right." And then the one girl did the audition. Never heard if she got it or if the commercial came out.
Oh no!
But all to say, walked out of that audition, and the 3 of us who had stepped out, we were all from the same agency. We called the agency, and again, the English wise one of us did some speaking and just explained, and obviously our agency was like, "We understand this wasn't exactly written properly in the description." And fast forward, this other dancer, so my English friend, who now you actually know as Bryony, Bryony Albert, I bumped into her at another, very strange thing that we had to do. I was called once from my agency, "Can you be at this place in an hour because you have basketball on your resume and we need someone who has played basketball?" And I said, okay. So I literally rushed my bum over to this spot, and it was just me and Bryony, and we were the only 2, I guess, who had basketball skills written on our resume as special skills, and we had to literally like freestyle dribbling a ball. And so,
oh my God.
Yeah, I don't think either of us ended up getting it. I think maybe she got it for like she did an extra day of something, and then they ended up not using her and going with guys instead. But anyways, just bumping into her in the strangest of scenarios. Then take it a month or two later, and I have a day where I have 3 auditions to go to, and so I'm heading to a casting first, and I walk into this casting, and out walks Bryony, and oh hey, how are you? Great. And funny enough, the audition I had later that afternoon, choreographer was Bryony. And,
Oh
I
my.
have no idea that this is going to, I don't even, I think she's a dancer. I don't even think that she's also, now going into choreography. And I don't really know her that well. We've just bumped into each other in interesting scenarios. And we just had, a good rapport. And I guess we got along well. And, anyways, getting to the point, I went to this audition later. She was the choreographer. I said hi, but I just stayed in my corner and did my thing. But this was at a point where it had already been about 6 months of me living in LA and not having booked a job yet. I had even taken a small trip back to Montreal, done some teaching. You do what you got to do. And I was just like, in my head, I said, I'm getting this job. Like, I am going to do whatever I have to do in this audition, because I knew I just felt like this had this teeny tiny bit of a chance more than some of the other things. Just her knowing my face, just her having seen me before, because especially being in LA and not knowing all the choreographers and how, it's very difficult to get to know them. They're not even around half the time. So anyway, this was just something where I was like, I just have to go for this. And it was a tough audition. There was probably 200 girls, I guess. And we had 2 different styles to learn. There was another choreographer on the job as well. We had to learn one in heels, one in flat shoes. We had to then do both choreographies, 5x5 in front of the camera, casting people there, the whole thing. And basically I just said, I'm just going to do my thing, and that's all I can do. And long story short, she ended up messaging me a few days later, hey, can you send me this? Can you send me that? Asking me for a headshot and I just remember I was in the middle of this other job that, you can like sit in an audience here to make cash. So we would do that sometimes at the beginning as well. And I was in the audience and I knew I couldn't answer my phone, and I'm getting these messages freaking out because all I want to do is leave where I'm at and go answer her. And to get to the point that was the first job I ever booked in LA. And she fought for me because she said, no, I like this girl. I think I can work with her. And, obviously I had to do my job at the audition. I mean, I definitely think that I did that as well, but it really helped to have somebody pulling for you in your corner, just because she liked me as a person, and I never knew that she'd be someone I would work with, And yeah, there's a lot more that goes to that. There's been a lot more that she's had to do with in my journey as well. But it's just to say that sometimes you just don't know what's going to lead to what, and you have to always just remain true to yourself, be authentic, be nice to people. And
Yeah, because you actually honestly never know. And I mean, I love the story, and I also got the chance to meet her. She's a wonderful person. She got you many things from then on out, but that's because she got a chance to see your true authentic self. And like, you know how I feel about you. I've always said you're probably one of the hardest working, females on the planet, hands down. And it was nice that someone else, saw that genuine, authentic, kind self, and it trickles down to more and more things, because they do often say so much, it's not your talent, but it's who and it's your look and things like that. But this is a combination of all of those things. You work so hard to discover who you are, to be able to back it up when you are kind to people and they give you a chance, and you don't let them down, which I think is pretty amazing. But what she did led to 2 of your major tours, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, just one little thing I'll add is, like, first off, that first job that I did, I mean, for a first job in LA to go on a tour, we did a month in Asia, Australia, Dubai. Like, that was the most incredible experience. And we were a small team. It was literally just me and one other dancer who ended up she's one of my closest friends now. And we, not only from that month, for about 2 years, we were kind of doing little on and off trips, and we went back to Indonesia, we went to Bali. We just did some of the most I had some of the most amazing experiences, and it all started in my mind from that one crazy audition that I walked out of. And I think that kind of adds a little bit to what I was saying before too, about boundaries and knowing who you are. And obviously you said it really well before when you said that it's important to know that, and you can kind of get lost if you don't know that, especially in a place like LA. And I'm really happy that I listened to my gut from the get, like from, early on. I said to myself, like, this doesn't feel right, I'm not going to do it. And that's a really hard thing to do. And I especially think as a young person, as a young female, especially in an industry that is very driven by males a lot of the time, it's hard to know when to say okay or no or yes, because you want to get the job. And there's, the jobs feel so scarce. But I just, you migrate towards the people you migrate towards, and having that relationship built with Bryony, like you said, led to many things. It led to as well the tour that I recently did. Recently, before COVID life, I got to go on tour with BB Rexa, opening for the Jonas Brothers this past year, and it was just one of the most amazing experiences as well that I'll never forget. Getting to perform, at the Bell Center in Montreal was just a highlight. Tour, and you were there, and it was so exciting. You actually came twice.
Yeah, I was there with Tara. I was there with your sis.
Yes, you came to
And
Toronto as well.
yeah, and even saw you in Toronto. It was such a good show. You were so good. And shout out to Ari as well. I hope she's doing well.
Yes.
But it was such an incredible thing, and it was so good to see you up there, like doing what we all know that you deserved to be doing. And the key part is, all of this stemming from you knowing your worth and saying no to something. Like, that's a huge part of the project that I've started, Project Ray, that you are highly involved in as well. And it's the knowing to say no. And we've even done a podcast called The Gig Worth Losing. And I want people, especially younger dancers, to start understanding that sometimes that no leads to all the other yeses, like in more aspects than one. When you're told no at an audition, it can mean more yeses. And when you say no to something because of your moral values, that can also lead to more yeses. So we need to do more of this, like standing up for ourselves and understanding who we're truly meant to be. Yeah. And you're so much of that, and I want to get more into that, the advice you have for young dancers and discovering your own path, but I want to get into it more based on this program that you've started called the Virtuous Movement. I'm so interested in hearing more about this. I've heard nothing but good things from all of the participants. You've done 2 sessions of this now. I'm hoping there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But I guess obviously the catalyst was a bit COVID related. So let's let the listeners know, how it all came to be, why, and what are your hopes with this?
Yeah, totally. So basically when COVID hit, I think we all experienced this in a same but different way, I'm sure. And it was something that I think we had no idea how long it would last. We didn't know where it would take us, how it would change our lives, I'll say. And when it first hit, I think a lot of us went into kind of survival mode, if I could say. We were trying to figure out, what does this mean for us? Like, do we just, now we're just, okay, we sit in the house, we take a walk, we figure out what our day is going to be. But then, I'm the type that I'm so used to the hustle and what's next, and working hard to get to that next step, and how can I either better my life or work towards my next goal. And I couldn't sit still anymore. And after about, I guess a little over a month, I saw my 5-year LA anniversary, or so I call it, coming in the horizon. And I was like, I started thinking about that. And, in May 1st was my, the 5-year mark. And I just started thinking about all of the things that I've been through, all the lessons I've learned, all of, the many things that I've experienced that have led me really to be who I am, because it's really those obstacles that teach you the most about yourself, I would say. And I just ended up really thinking hard about it. I put out a little video on my IGTV to kind of just express, I said 5 lessons learned in 5 years in LA. And those were really things that just stuck out in my mind, and things that I will carry with me for my whole life. And if I can share with others, I was like, was happy to do that. And something I can say I've known for many years, in not always knowing what I wanted to do, because I didn't really mention this before, but I didn't grow up wanting to be a dancer. I didn't even know that was a profession. Like I didn't grow up with that mentality. Not growing up in a studio in terms of ballet and stuff, I didn't even know that was a thing. And only later in life did I realize that was an option. And it, like I had explained, it took me a while to get to that idea, and even just have the confidence to just jump in and go, okay, I'm going to move to LA and try this thing. But but you know, in figuring out where I wanted to be and what I wanted to do, you know, I just learned so much about myself. And so after doing this video talking online about, you know, what I've learned from LA, well, what I was going to say was that I knew for a long time that I wanted to help people. And this is something I've just said over and over, and I never knew exactly in what capacity. But from learning all of these things, I knew that this was going to be a part of what I would share, you know, with others down the line. And I was always just waiting for it to make sense. I was waiting for
Right.
the project to kind of just come into be, which, I mean, as we know, things don't just come necessarily to be, but pieces do fall into place sometimes. And I think COVID was that for me, to be honest. I think COVID gave me the time to really sit down and not have anything else to focus on except what is this next thing in my life? What is this? How can I further my purpose? And it's funny because I looked back into my little journal not long ago, and in January, I literally said, I want to further my purpose in life. And I've always known it's more than just dance, if I can say. I've always,
Yeah.
it's not just about me being the dancer or the performer as much as it's a huge part of my life. And I do love it and have a lot more dreams in it. I just know how much teaching is a huge part of my life, and sharing with others and trying to let people see something in a different way. I love explaining and, you know, just getting, I mean, you've seen me teach, you know, many times, and I think it's just something that I
Yes.
care deeply about. And so to get to the point, COVID made me go, okay, what does this mean and what can I do right now to focus on? And I literally just forced myself to sit down and start writing and start just, what am I even thinking about? Because I didn't even know. And it literally just like flew out of me. I think I just sat down and forced myself to write, and things just came out, ideas came out, and this program came out. And I didn't even know what it was at first. I wasn't even calling it a program. I was like, it's a project because I wasn't even
Yeah.
sure what it would grow to be. And the first session I started out in June. I just finished my second session, like you said, this past week actually. And it's been the most amazing experience. When I first got into it, it was this crazy idea of, wow, I'm just creating something like out of my brain, out of my head, you know, this is something, and you feel kind of crazy doing that, right? You're like, you go through this idea of questioning of, you know, it's all of this valid and who's going to be interested in my opinion. And then you realize that no matter what, even if there's just, you know, one person who wants to hear from something that you've experienced or understand, you know, your story or want to learn from you, that's enough. And it's that one person who really matters, you know? And
Totally.
luckily, I had an awesome first session of dancers who were just so eager to learn, who wanted to train, and basically the premise of this program is, yes, it's based around dance because that has been my journey and that is what I know and what I, you know, do have an expertise around. And then it's also based on my thoughts on life and my experiences and all the lessons that I've learned that have led me to now be able to be the person I am and to want to continue to grow as a human, as a dancer. And so the whole program is based around 4 weeks. It has a different, you know, theme to each week where each one leads to the next. It is called the Virtuous Movement, and it's funny because the name itself only came to me at the end of the first month. I literally finished the first month. I was going into my last day with the dancers, and I came up with this name, and it's just so fitting because basically, you know, it's a movement, not only movement dance wise, but it is a movement because I want these dancers to start changing their mentalities and changing the way they think
Mhm.
about their life, themselves, and how they can honestly accomplish their goals if they can change the way they look at themselves and their life. And virtuous because if you know what a virtuous cycle is, it is like a positive reinforcement feedback loop. It is like the snowball effect when,
Oh.
you know, it's basically the opposite of a vicious cycle, right? As you do things, you gain positive results and positive reinforcement, and then you continue to do these things more and more and more, and it becomes more positive. Like when you throw a snowball down a hill and it gains momentum, grows larger and larger and larger, moves faster and faster. So the point of this is to show the program is a big virtuous movement in the terms of its material. So we start talking about, you know, something I've mentioned, being yourself, figuring out who you want to be, what do you like, what do you dislike. It goes into gaining confidence from knowing that. And that confidence, leading you to this balance of your pride and your humility and figuring out more and more who you are, which leads you to being more authentic and being more genuine. And like you mentioned, building genuine relationships, building genuine skills, using your authenticity to really hone in on your skills and who you want to be as a dancer, but also obviously as a human. And the final chapter is finding that true belief in yourself and that true trust in your process and in your path. And I think that's one of the hardest things to ultimately do. And it's all a continuous process. It's a never ending process, I'll say. But I just feel like, and having done it now twice, this program, the same thing twice, I just see how it, even if one little lesson or one little theory that I bring up sticks with these dancers, I see how it opens their mind and changes the way that they think, and not only that, but changes their dancing. And that has been the most rewarding thing for me as a teacher, and as someone who just wants to share from their experience, is to see how dancers of all ages can grasp this material and take it in their own way and take certain lessons that will stick with them more than others. But I just know that like months from now, something is going to come up where they're going to be like, oh yeah, this reminds me of, and it's already happened, which has just been the most beautiful thing to see. But in a nutshell, that's what the program's about. And obviously they're learning a choreography every week, and we're, relating that to the material, and it all works together, which is kind of what my point is, to show this parallel between life and dance. But it's been very, very awesome to see the outcome that it has had on so many of these dancers. I've had 4 dancers from the first session that actually came and, did the second session with me, did a second version, I'll say, with me. And they've been so trusting of me, and I've been just like experimenting with trying new things, and it went better than I could have imagined. And I'm just so happy that it's brought something new to some of these dancers, and a lot of them from Montreal, which has been great to, reconnect with a lot of Montreal dancers. But it's been pretty awesome to see.
No, that's awesome, because I know you had planned to even come here and teach, and obviously COVID stopped all of that. So the fact that you still get to teach these kids is amazing. But for me, this is something you were born to do. You were born to give back and teach. Like you said, you started teaching basically at the age of 11. It was just something instilled in you. And when you first moved to LA, I know that you had mentioned to me, like, you didn't want to teach at first because your goal was to pursue this dancer part first and foremost, right? Which I believe that you have a lot of great check marks on your bucket list. But being able during this time of COVID to create such a program that has this key parallel between humanity and dancing, and allowing these young dancers to figure out who they are, has been imperative at this time. I think a lot of their self-esteem has kind of been lowered throughout this time, and dancers not being able to dance or be around friends and family, that can be heartbreaking. But to bring them back to life with a program like this has truly changed, I think, a lot of their mentalities. And we have a greater responsibility, I think, as teachers, as dance teachers. We're not here to just do steps. We're not here to just do choreography. We should be taking this on as a more serious role. And I think you've done just that. Life lessons are what's important here. We look back into all of the times and how there have been such key people in our lives who have impacted us in such, mind molding types of ways. And those are a lot of the times those that are in our lives via our passion or our quote unquote hobby or something else that we want to do outside of school. So if we take this job just as seriously, I think we can change major things and change the world. And that's why I wanted to have you involved so heavily in Project Ray on the teaching aspect, because I think you are just so good at this. And the way you explain things and the way you inspire the kids, like, I see it. And we need more of that and more of you. Virtuous Movement is such a genius name as well. I appreciated you breaking that down. It amplifies the meaning for me now, being able to kind of see that whole thing visually. And, I'm hoping you're going on to doing more sessions. I'm hoping you're going on to doing more things, and this can kind of, affect people around the world. I know you've got, I think, even a girl from Mexico doing it, and people from Canada. Like, it's really cool. Like, I guess we can thank COVID for the ability to allow us to train with people online that we never would have gotten the chance to, perhaps. I don't know, reach out in that aspect. But
Yeah.
moving forward into the future, let's say, what are your hopes for young dancers and humans? You know, it can be about dealing with COVID, it can be about dealing with other life issues, but now that you're really reflecting and looking as to what the next generation can become, what are your hopes for them for the future?
Yeah, it's a great question. As I've done this program, I've realized, I kind of mentioned it, but I actually had all ages in this program and all levels too. I opened it up very openly in that way because I wanted to experiment. I wanted to see how that could work. And I had from ages 9 to 33 in the same program, and all arrays of that, all a mixture of that. And it it has just opened my eyes to how much we've lost our confidence in, or it's just,
Mm,
confidence is one of the hardest things I think that we are able to have and then continuously keep with us, especially along a journey in dance or in the arts. I think it's hard because we are always scared. Sometimes we're scared to put our art out. Something I've learned the most is that
mm.
when we're young, we are not as like we are just we don't have those inhibitions. We're
Totally.
so much more free. And I think it's been interesting for the older ones in the program to learn from the younger ones and how they just go for things. We are not as inhibited. Like, we are more able to
So true.
yeah, just be open and trying things. And as we get older, we start to be more judgmental on ourselves, more hard on ourselves. A lot of us are perfectionists as artists, and we
Mm,
are always striving for greatness, and we literally allow that to block us. We are our biggest blocks. And that's what I've seen time and time again now, is that, we need to just allow ourselves to be who we are without all the judgment. And obviously, I think social media becoming so in the forefront of our lives nowadays has affected that. I think we're so much more aware of what everybody else is doing. Like, I think of when I was growing up, I never had to post a picture online or a video online and wonder if people were going to respond. Like, I never had to see what
right?
the other person was doing in their lives. So I just feel for these young dancers who are growing up with that and constantly comparing themselves, because I know as an adult that I still do that. We all have those moments of doing that. And honestly, my biggest hope is for dancers of all ages and honestly humanity to be able to,
Yes.
to trust their process, to trust their own path and timing, and understand that what's theirs is theirs and what is not theirs is not theirs, and that is okay. and
Mm,
and to really learn to trust your gut. And that is a really difficult thing to do, especially when you have so many influences around you, and you are just getting so much visual information on a constant basis. And so, this is, like I said, it's part of the last part of the first session of my program, where I really talk about believing in yourself and your dreams and trusting your own path. And I've seen, one of the biggest, I always ask the dancers at the end of the session, like, to name their top, let's say, 3 things that they learned in the month, just so I get an idea of what really stuck with them, because it's always nice for me to see that as well. And
nice.
they almost always bring up the idea of knowing to trust your own path, and understanding that what's for you is for you and what's for someone else is for someone else. And I think that is really the hardest thing to learn, no matter what age you're at. um, the idea that it is okay for someone else to have something that maybe you thought you deserved or you wanted because it was meant for them in that time. And once you can actually not just like know that, but understand that and feel that, you literally will feel so free, and you release all of this pressure that you put on yourself to be getting, or doing. And that patience that comes with that, oh, it's so valuable, just to be able to look at something and be like, you know what, that wasn't for me, and the thing that's for me is coming, and I'm going to get that when it makes sense. Because I'll tell you, G, like, I had to realize, I learned that pretty quick on. I think I actually remember learning that lesson from doing Luam's program in New York. I had done her program a couple times, her Rock the Industry, and that was, I think, my biggest takeaway from that was to know that what's for you is for you, and what isn't. And by knowing that and accepting that, I feel like I've continuously found myself in the jobs that made sense for me. And
Mm,
I've always listened to my gut. Like you mentioned this before, and I wanted to touch on it too. Like knowing your values and boundaries, and it's very hard to say no to something when all your friends are doing it, or
totally.
you realize that that doesn't feel right, even though someone else wants that. And I've had many instances of happen where all my friends were maybe even going to an audition, and I was like, well, I should go to this audition. I need the job. I want the money. But is this really the type of job that resonates with me? And unfortunately, I've said no a few times. Not unfortunately, but it felt unfortunate in the moment because you feel so stressed that you're making the wrong decision, and you're like, who am I to say no to something? But at the same time, if it's based on a certain something that doesn't resonate with you, a type of music, a type of style, then you're allowed to say no. Just because you need a job doesn't mean you should take whatever is being thrown at you. And I had to say no to things, and in the end, it always ended up being the right decision. It always ended up making sense for me, and it, like you said, those no's brought about the right yeses. And
Totally.
and just one last thing to add to that as well is you got to be okay with failure. And especially when you're reaching for dreams that are maybe a little bit more difficult to reach, and more of a, you're fighting against more people in the same, going for the same position. You got to realize that failure is a part of the job. And if you can't be okay with failure, you're probably not going to make it too far. And it's not
Mm,
for everybody. I'll say that for sure. And that's okay. That is nothing wrong with that. But you have to be that person who's willing to go, okay, I'm going to fail this many times because that win is going to be so worth it. And resiliency is just my word of, the month. I think it's something that keeps coming up. And I think it's a matter of knowing to pick yourself up and keep going because of how much you believe in your dreams. And so anyway, that is where I will take my hopes for the future of young dancers and just people in general is believe in what you want to do and picture it enough so you can actually go for it, and don't let anybody else's
mm.
process stop you.
Abso-freaking-lutely. I love that, and I love you. I always enjoy talking to you. It's always so insightful and heartwarming. Before I let you go, do you have any final words for our listeners today?
Well, I want to thank you for having me. Obviously, we've been friends for a really long time, and it's been just amazing to see you grow and to see this, awesome podcast. So I'm just super appreciative that you brought me on. So thank you for that. And
Oh,
I just want to also say, I think there's something for everybody, and I'll never say that, oh, my program is the right thing for every person or what, or vice, there's always something for everyone, and you have to go towards what resonates with you, which is what I've said. So I'm always going to say, like, go towards what feels right for you. And that's something that I hope, young dancers and really dancers of all ages too can just remember to go towards and be okay with. And, like you mentioned before, I am planning to do this program again. So I'm actually looking to start possibly first week of September. So I will be posting about that and putting out some, recap of the last session and some information and stuff. So if anybody's interested, they can always hit me up on, social, and I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has. And yeah, just be on the lookout, I guess, for that, because I'm always looking for, new people to connect with and to have a part of it.
I absolutely love it. Thank you so much, Randy. Have a wonderful day. Take care.
Thanks, Giulia. You too.
Another hour packed full of truly insightful lessons. Failure is part of the job. Know your values and your boundaries. Be resilient. There is a quote I love that really resonates with this episode. The greatest lesson I have learned in life is that I still have a lot to learn. Let's keep learning, let's keep growing, and remember, it's all part of the process.